really smart, really intelligent, really capable kids in your class. Teacher of group B, again, randomly assigned, was told these children are not quite as smart, they've tested a little lower, some of them have behavior problems, you may struggle with them passing tests and doing well, and some of their acting out issues, etc., etc. Over the course of the school year, Group A consistently excelled in behavior reports, school reports, academic reports, tests, assignments. Group B consistently was marked lower on the whole spectrum, on behavior, on emotional stability, on academic improvement, on test scores, etc. When the teachers were told at the end, you were told incorrect things, there were just as many bright kids in Group B as there were in Group A. They were shocked at how the self-fulfilling prophecy, or the Pygmalion effect, came into play. And I think the actual term Pygmalion effect, is a Shakespearean term. And so if you want to, delve into that a little further, please feel free to research it. It's very interesting. But the idea is that the expectation that comes true is only true because we act as if it was. So, I act out in school and I'm the bad kid because the expectation is already there that I'm the bad kid. So it's a lot easier for me to just act like the bad kid than to try to be good, because it's already true as far as everyone's concerned. And so that was, a childhood example. But what about I'm the funny guy? If everyone knows you as the funny guy, how do you then break apart from that and say, you know what, sometimes I just want to sit and enjoy and be quiet and not be the life of the party and not be the center of attention? But we have to maintain that because everyone already expects that it's true. So there are people that will argue that that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are some benefits, especially if the self-fulfilling prophecy is positive. In other words, Group A, the teacher believed that they were going to be bright and smart and successful. So in that instance, they benefited from that self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's not always a bad thing. But unfortunately, most often, we tend to gravitate toward the negative views of things. So that's certainly something we need to keep in mind, especially with our own self-concept. How much are we believing about ourselves because we feel that that's already what people think about us? Okay, so quick question for you. What is personality and how is it related to self-concept? And you can either jot down your thoughts or just kind of ponder them for a minute. What is personality? How would you define that word? And then how does that relate to self-concept? Because we've defined self-concept now, but where does personality come into play? As far as an official definition, personality is our internal predisposition. So the way that we are naturally made, that's kind of the biological side of it. And our behavioral characteristics, more of the social side, are learned behaviors that describe how we react to the environment. So if we tend to be shy versus outgoing, some of that is we have a genetic predisposition or an innate tendency to be more reserved or more outgoing. But then some of it is our experiences and what has happened in our lives have behaviorally molded us to react in a certain way. Are we mellow? Are we uptight? So if you think about any type of personality trait spectrum, so, very reserved, very gregarious, very social, very shy, any, continuum, if you will, or back and forth of a personality trait, we fall somewhere on that spectrum. So how does that then relate to self-concept? Are these characteristics learned or innate? I think you could argue both. And there will be some that will argue one side more than the other, but I think research even has shown that it is a combination. So then we need to start talking about a willingness to communicate. So we're talking about personality, we're talking about whether or not they're learned or they're biological, where do they come from, our willingness to communicate. this is a strong personality characteristic. It has been well studied, and interestingly, it defines a lot. You know, if you look at a lot of successful people, they have a very strong willingness to communicate. And so they've done a lot of studies on presidents and CEOs and very successful entrepreneurs and business people and astronauts, and how our society defines success, if you will. That is a strong personality characteristic that has been found consistently through all of those types of people. Then on the flip side of that, there's communication apprehension. So when we talk about, you can be very willing to communicate and open to communicate, then you can also have communication apprehension, a shyness or a tendency not to talk with others. And that's not necessarily to say that people with communication apprehension can't be successful. There are very reserved, shy, mellow billionaires. So that's not to say that communication apprehension prevents you from success or prevents you from reaching your dreams or your goals. But there is that continuum again where you need to balance, this is who I think that I am, this is who I want to be. Do those match up? And how does that define my self-concept? Okay, so the actual definition of communication apprehension is the fear or anxiety associated with either real or anticipated communication with another person or persons. So let's kind of tease that apart. Fear or anxiety. So, that nervous, anxious dread that you feel in your body or you feel in your mind when you think about either actually communicating or the possibility of communicating with another person. And what's interesting is, if you're anxious about going on a job interview, let's say, that you are in that moment and there's a real person that you're going to be interviewing with. But for several days leading up to that interview, that fear or anxiety of the anticipation of meeting with that person can be just as significant as when you're actually in the moment. So how might we recognize communication apprehension in one-on-one communication? And these are kind of just food for thought questions, and this may be something that you take some time to jot down your ideas and then you reflect about them in the reflection post. But I think often we don't even realize that we are apprehensive about certain communication situations. So, in meetings, and of course, not everyone's going to be apprehensive in all of these situations, but look at these 7 scenarios here and say, which is the one that I would say I have the most communication apprehension with? Which is the one I have the least communication apprehension with? Why is that? Why am I really comfortable talking with family, but I'm really apprehensive about doing a class discussion? And that can really kind of help you make sense of where that's coming from, and then of course how to handle it. Sorry, I didn't read those to you, did I? I'm sorry. And I went too far back, just 1 minute. Okay, I'm sorry. The options were one-on-one communication, meetings, class discussions, with friends, with strangers, with family, or with coworkers. Okay, sorry about that. So, for your reflection post, this is something that I always do in class, and it is absolutely, hands down, my students and my favorite activity of the whole semester. So unfortunately, we're going to have to modify it a little bit because we are online, so I'm not actually going to physically see your show and tell, but we're doing show and tell nonetheless, a modified version. So basically what I'm asking you to do, in our normal class setting, I actually have you bring in a physical object, just like kindergarten all over again. And I've actually had people say, I haven't done show and tell since I was 5 years old. And it is amazing what you learn about yourself and what you learn about your classmates in a show and tell setting. So I'm hoping that this will convey online as well. So again, this is going to go in your reflection post, but note to self, you will also need to reflect on the material this week. So you cannot just do your show and tell post and have that be enough. So make sure that you incorporate both. But show and tell reflection post, I would like you to describe something meaningful that you would have brought in to class. So take the online piece out of this for a minute If you hear me say, we're doing show and tell, what are you bringing? Once you've decided what that is, then you go on and you type your post describing why you chose it, what it is, why it's meaningful to you. So it can be a picture of someone or some place that's important, a lucky hat, like a specific thing that you own, jewelry, whatever. I'd like it to be something you're comfortable sharing, obviously. Remember school rules and laws of our land, so please don't virtually show and tell something that, shouldn't be shown. And really, I want this to be something that represents who you are. We're talking about self-concept. So, I'd prefer it not to be, oh, this is a picture of my favorite cat from when I was 5. Unless your relationship with that cat defined who you are and really had this long-lasting impact on, your life. Please make it something that's current. Please make it something that is really a significant element of who you are, your self-concept. Okay, if you want to be really creative and you can figure out how, you can actually post a picture of it, but, we'll see. Okay, so how about questions to consider? What I like to do. This, I think, if you answer these questions truthfully and you really kind of think about them, it will give you a pretty good understanding of a little bit more about your self-concept. Because what you like to do, obviously what you involve yourself in and what you spend your time doing speaks about who you are. So what do you like to do? What experiences have you had? What has defined you and what have you gone through that has shaped your beliefs and your thoughts and your understanding about yourself? Who are the important people in my life? Who are important to you and why? What skills do I have? What am I good at? And then what events have impacted my life? All of those things are helpful. Okay, so we're doing a lot of stuff today, so I'm hoping that you're keeping up. If you need to pause or take a break, please feel free. Okay, quick survey. How many of you can draw? Just consider that. Can you draw? Okay. How many of you can sing? Yes or no? Just, what's your first thought when I ask those questions? What about how many of you can dance or act? Okay. So once you've considered those questions, why or why not? Whatever you answered, even if you didn't, you might have said, yes, I can sing, but I can't draw or dance. Why did you say yes to one and no to others? How did you define whether or not you can do those things? And then, do you think kindergartners would answer the same? If you surveyed a group of 5-year-olds and said, how many of you can draw? What do you think their response would be? How many of you can sing? What do you think their response would be? And I'm hoping that you are thinking along the same lines, that they would say, yes, they can. I can physically pick up a piece of paper and pencil, and I can draw a stick figure, and I can physically sing a song, and I know the words, and I can dance around the room, and I can act like I'm a queen or a king or a dog or a kangaroo. So interestingly, that the older we get, the less likely we are to believe in our abilities. And why is that? Because experiences, looking glass self, beliefs, attitudes have either said, yes, you are good at these things, or no, not so much. And we compare ourselves to other people. Very interesting. Okay, so self-concept or self-esteem. Let's kind of look at the difference there, because similar but different. A description of who you are is self-concept versus an evaluation of who you are compared to others. So you have an evaluation of who you are in relation to what other people are able to do or believe or think versus just who you are. My self-concept